The Allies were making steady progress in freeing the islands of the Philippines from control by Japanese forces. On March 11, 1945, General MacArthur ordered the 8th Army, which included the 21st Infantry, to clear the island of Mindanao of enemy forces. There were an estimated 43,000 Japanese soldiers on Mindanao, 18,000 of them concentrated in the Davao area in the southeast. The rest were positioned in the major towns, ports, and at airfields. Mindanao was the last major concentration of enemy troops in the Philippines. Japan had had a colonial presence on the island for 30 years, and 19,000 of Davao's most prominent citizens were Japanese. For the past 3 years, the Japanese army had been constructing defenses in depth in the Davao area. The harbor was heavily mined, and a network of trenches and hidden bunkers had been built in the fields and jungles around Davao, in a 2 to 3 mile wide by 25 mile long corridor along the southeast coast. The defenses had anticipated an attack from Davao Gulf. The Allied invasion plan was to attack at Ilana Bay in the undefended west, and then drive eastward 140 miles to Davao and attack the enemy from the rear. Success of the operation depended on speed of movement to take advantage of the April to June break in the monsoon season to somewhat improve road and fighting conditions. As a force multiplier for the Allies, there were 24,000 Filipino guerrillas operating on the island. The guerrillas were commanded by an American colonel by the name of Wendell Fertig, who had escaped from Bataan in 1942. By April of 1945, the guerrillas controlled most of the island, keeping the Japanese confined to their garrisons and major roads. Upon landing, the commanding general of the 10th Corps would assume control of all guerrilla forces on Mindanao. The guerrilla forces provided valuable support to American troops. Mindanao is the second largest island in the Philippines. The inland topography is rugged and mountainous. Much of the terrain is covered by rainforests, and there are innumerable crocodile-infested rivers, lakes, swamps, and grasslands. In the cultivable areas, there are dense groves of abaca trees grown for hemp. Abaca trees pose a significant obstacle for combat forces in that they trap heat and sap the energy of troops attempting to move through them. They also reduce visibility to near zero. The island has only 2 main roads. Highway 1 runs across the island from Cotabato in the west to Davao in the east. The Sayre Highway runs north-south through the center of the island. The country's native population is a conglomeration of Christian Filipinos, Mohammedan Moros, and heathen savages. There were many different military units involved in Operation Victor. The focus here is on the parts of the operation that involved the 21st Infantry. Areas highlighted in yellow show locations where the 21st Infantry was present. The numbers are used to show the chronological sequence of movement. The first 2 numbers will be discussed here. The others will be covered on subsequent slides. The first phase of the invasion of Mindanao, shown at 1 on the map, involved an invasion on the Zamboanga Peninsula on the western end of the island by the 41st Division. Elements of the 21st Infantry were assigned a role in this operation. The landings on the peninsula were preceded by several days of airstrikes on enemy positions around the city of Zamboanga, located on the southern tip of the peninsula. In early March, Marine aircraft began use of an airstrip near Dipolog on the north end of the peninsula, when it came under the control of friendly Filipino guerrillas. Allied command soon learned from the guerrillas that an enemy force of about 400 was advancing to capture the airstrip. To counter the threat, on March 8th to 10th, Two reinforced companies, F and G, of the 21st Infantry were flown from Mindoro to Dipolog in transport planes, where they secured the airstrip and the town. Their presence was enough to cause the hostile forces to turn back. The two companies remained in Dipolog until March 27th and returned by plane to Mindoro. At 11:15 on April 14, 1945, the 24th Division convoy departed Mindoro for the three-day voyage to Mindanao. At 1600 on the previous day, April 13th, the convoy with headquarters 10th Corps and other task force units departed Leyte. Just as the task force weighed anchor to depart Mindoro, the task force commander received a message indicating that Filipino guerrillas had taken the airfield at Malabang and trapped a battalion of enemy troops in the area. Marine planes were dispatched and bombed the Japanese position, killing many and causing the survivors to flee through the guerrilla lines. The Malabang airfield was an invasion objective of the 21st Infantry. Since the airfield was now in guerrilla hands, a verbal change order was issued for the 21st Infantry just in time before the convoy imposed radio silence. Only the 3rd Battalion of the 21st Infantry would land at Malabang to secure the airfield and then move south overland to join up with the rest of the regiment, which was now directed to come ashore further south at Parang, shown at number 2. On the afternoon of April 16th, the two convoys rendezvoused off the Zamboanga Peninsula. The assault ships then assembled in battle order as they entered the Moro Gulf, proceeding to the objective beaches under cover of darkness. At 06:30 on April 17th, naval guns opened up on the landing site at Parang. As the main invasion of Mindanao was commencing, back in the States, my mother was hosting a showing of some of the slides I had taken in the Pacific to the Ladies' Auxiliary of the Harrisburg Dental Society. The ladies would not be getting a total picture of the reality of war. At 0800, the 3rd Battalion, 21st Infantry, under Marine air cover, waded ashore at Red Beach near the coastal village of Baras, just west of Malabang. Preparatory naval bombardment of this landing site was canceled as unnecessary based on information provided by the guerrilla force commander. By 10:30, the Malabang airfield and town were secured. Patrols were dispatched north to Lake Lanao and south to Parang. By 13:30, the 1st and 2nd Battalions of the 21st were ashore on Green Beach at Parang. The landings were unopposed. There were only 2 casualties, both of them wounded. One of the wounded was the regimental commander, Colonel William Verbeck, who was shot in the back by a sniper. The colonel's driver spotted the sniper and killed him with a machine gun burst. Lieutenant Colonel Arthur Henderson took over command until the colonel was able to return 2 weeks later. From Parang, the 21st boarded Duck W's, an armed landing craft, and traveled up the Mindanao River. Along the water route, the 21st Infantry seized the towns of Cotabato, Tamantaco, and Lomopog, with no enemy opposition. They then followed behind the 34th Infantry eastward on the river approximately 35 miles to Fort Pickett. This river movement paralleled a movement by the 19th Infantry, which was traveling overland using Highway 1. The river provided a much faster means of moving troops and supplies than the hazardous overland route. The photo on the left shows an amphibious vehicle transporting troops across the Mindanao River estuary. In his book, Jungle, Sea, and Occupation, Paul Vetch, who had served in the 21st, had this to say about the Army's multi-purpose amphibious Duck W's. In Army parlance, Duck W stood for D equals 1942, U equals amphibian, K equals front-wheel drive, W equals rear-wheel drive. We just called them ducks. The 7-ton ducks are impressive vehicles measuring 8 feet wide, 9 feet high, and 32 feet long, with the capacity to carry 20 fully equipped soldiers. On land, the duck is powered by a 100 horsepower, 270 cubic inch GMC engine, traveling at speeds up to 50 miles an hour. In water, the ducks can travel up to 7 knots. After fighting with enemy troops encountered at Fort Pickett and the nearby town of Cabocan, the 19th Infantry led the 24th Division advance east across the mountains on Route 1 towards the east coast town of Digos. This advance was followed by the 34th Infantry. The 21st Infantry was held at Cabocan in 24th Division Reserve. The support units that traveled with the 2nd Echelon Convoy from Mindoro landed at Parang and caught up with the rest of the 21st Infantry Regiment while in reserve at Cabocan. When the 21st Infantry was relieved of reserve duty, it traveled east, overland, the remaining distance toward the Japanese stronghold around Davao. The 21st was in position near the town of Talomo on May 1st, my 35th birthday, and began a period of continuous and intense fighting. While the infantry was advancing eastward across Mindanao, Marine Aircraft Group 24 had moved into the Malabang airfield on April 20th. Some of the aircraft that operated out of Malabang are shown on the slide. Air support was critical in the success of the Mindanao campaign. Forward air control teams deployed with the infantry were used to direct the strikes. The presence and firepower of friendly air cover was extremely reassuring to the infantry soldier on the ground. Here, our Filipino scout and 2 soldiers stand on a trail with some guerrilla fighters. The Japanese buried hundreds of 500-pound bombs in the roads we traveled across on Mindanao. We also encountered much wreckage and the stench of death. On the 150-mile trip across Mindanao, the retreating Japanese destroyed about 100 bridges to slow our advance. The Japanese withdrew to concealed positions set up in the region between Davao Gulf and the mountains. Mount Apo, the island's highest peak, can be seen in the distant center of this photo. Notice the black rubber raft being carried in one of our jeeps. Here is one of the many bridges damaged by the Japanese. One of our soldiers is visible passing on the near riverbank. This map shows the area where the 21st Infantry was engaged in continuous fighting in the enemy heavily fortified area to the west of Davao. The dates show where the major engagements occurred. By this time in the war, the Marines were perfecting the doctrine of close air support of infantry on the ground. Describing the concentrated strikes made in central Mindanao, one pilot said, "This was the most heavily bombed area of any in the Philippines. The Japs were dug in underneath trees so well we had to blow the whole area before the Army could advance." Our Marine observers, who were with the ground liaison party, said the damage was terrible and almost indescribable. Flight after flight strafed the small area for days. When we began, it was heavily wooded, but when we finished, there wasn't anything left. The pace of the airstrikes reached between 150 and 200 sorties a day, with the largest number in a day involving 245 aircraft dropping 155 tons of bombs. The sound of the aircraft and the bombing was constant. We were glad that we were not on the receiving end of those deadly explosions. Ground troops appreciated the support we received from Marine aircraft. Without them, our job would have been much more difficult. On April 30th, Marine planes used napalm for the first time, hitting a hill near the town of Davao. From this time on, fire from the air was available, with strikes as large as 32 165-gallon tanks being dropped on a single target. The use of this type of warfare proved effective in routing the stubborn enemy troops from their network of hidden pillboxes. Amid the pattern of close air support, there was one sad, unfortunate tragedy involving 24th Division troops. A system had been created to direct a strike referred to as bomb on my bomb. Ground artillery would fire a burst to mark the target's location for the striking aircraft. On that day, the Japanese fired a mortar round into our lines. The incoming aircraft mistook it for the signal bomb. The airstrike resulted in 32 men of the division being killed or wounded. 24 Division Commander Major General Roscoe Woodruff was briefed on the incident. In spite of the accident, the general lamented the tragic consequences of the mishap, but offered his praise to the Marines who flew their missions in support of ground troops at great risk to themselves from enemy fire and weather conditions. Through this area of our intense fighting ran numerous streams. The entire area was covered with abaca groves so thick that movement through them was almost impossible. The abaca tree resembles a banana plant, but grows to a height of 20 feet. The stalks are about a foot in diameter and were planted only a few feet apart. To give you an idea of the strength of these plants, abaca fibers are used to make manila rope. The abaca trees trapped heat close to the ground, causing many cases of heat exhaustion among the GIs. The road network in this area was a system of parallel roads some 3,000 to 4,000 yards apart, with unimproved roads connecting them. The Japanese built innumerable pillboxes and a very elaborate system of trenches, foxholes, and spider holes throughout the area. All of it was well camouflaged. It was difficult to detect them, even a few feet away. Due to the denseness of surrounding vegetation and intense heat, movement off the roads was very limited. The Jeep driver is Major Erner Jones. He was our regimental surgeon. As medical personnel, we traveled in the rear of the infantry column. When the infantry moved out, that was our signal to start packing up. Setting up and breaking down camp became an often repeated ritual in the move across Mindanao. Our tents were heavy canvas and our gear was not lightweight. Thank goodness for trucks and Army manpower. Little did I know at the time that this experience would prove highly valuable training for my post-war photography expeditions to Mexico. Here is the view of the 57th Portable Surgical Hospital during combat operations on Mindanao. These compact mobile hospitals played a vital role in the treatment of severely wounded soldiers in the various campaigns in the Philippines. The Portable Surgical Hospital provided emergency surgery and treatment until the injured soldier could be transported to an evacuation hospital further from the combat area. On Mindanao, as was the case on Leyte and Mindoro, the presence of airstrips enabled many of the wounded, after initial treatment, to be flown to fixed hospitals at other locations. This offensive action on Mindanao was completed with great loss to the 21st Infantry. Casualties in killed and wounded were higher than ever sustained in one battle in the 21st Infantry history. 2 battalion commanders were wounded, 3 company commanders were killed, and 10 company commanders were wounded. The Japanese defenders demonstrated fanatical behavior. Banzai charges and night infiltration by suicide, demolition units harassed all forward perimeters throughout the campaign. Japanese invaded artillery and quartermaster perimeters, and even the division command post with mines strapped to their bellies. Close combat with enemy suicide detachments was frequent. Japanese soldiers buried bombs in the roadways with cords attached to igniters and detonated them from concealed positions when their targets passed. While the 21st Infantry was fighting on Mindanao, Adolf Hitler committed suicide on April 30th. Berlin fell to the Allies, and on May 7th, Germany surrendered. On June 19th, the 21st Infantry was withdrawn from combat and moved to a reserve area. The 18th marked the 63rd day of continuous battle against a well-trained enemy. The regiment counted 2,133 enemy killed, which was 42% of the total for the entire division. On June 30th, organized Japanese resistance ended on Mindanao. However, mop-up operations continued. Total casualties for the 24th Division through June 30th were 426 killed, 2,050 wounded, and 1 missing. Enemy casualties by the 24th Division were 6,756 killed and 75 wounded. On July 16th, the 1st Battalion of the 21st Infantry boarded ships in Davao for the final amphibious landing of the war. This was made against scattered enemy units holding Sarangani Bay. Marine aircraft covered the assault landings. On August 6th, the first atomic bomb, named Little Boy, was dropped on Hiroshima, Japan, killing approximately 70,000. This was followed on August 9th by a second bomb named Fat Man, dropped on Nagasaki, killing approximately 50,000. On August 9th, there was one final extraordinary episode involving Marine aircraft. A Japanese lieutenant who had surrendered went on an airstrike aboard one of the Marine PBJs and guided the striking force to the exact enemy target. August 14th was proclaimed VJ Day, and on September 2nd, Japan formally surrendered aboard the USS Missouri. On Mindanao, in the days following this formal surrender, 22,000 Japanese troops emerged from the jungle west of Davao and surrendered to American forces, along with some 13,000 Japanese citizens who had fled the coastal area ahead of the fighting. The Japanese weren't the only thing we fought in the Philippines. Here a soldier faces a swarm of grasshoppers. Our camp was struck by this massive infestation. Seeing this made me think of the 8th plague God sent upon the Egyptians in the Old Testament book of Exodus. Fortunately, our plague, though annoying, was not nearly as bad as theirs. When the combat phase of the Mindanao campaign came to an end, the Army was able to open dental clinics for treatment of the troops. This photo shows the building selected for the regimental dental clinic on Mindanao. Though the conditions here were still primitive, it was good to be back to practicing dentistry again. These cartoon sketches were tacked up at the dental clinic in Davao. The cartoon depicts me treating a patient at a clinic set up after the fighting. Notice the sign, Painless Dentist, tacked on the wall. This same theme of Painless Dentist was written about me 17 years earlier in my 1928 high school yearbook. In that yearbook was written, "After this young Romeo graduates from the University of Pennsylvania, he's going to live in a house with Painless Dentist written on the window. Well, Bill, we know the sign will be an attraction in itself if it is printed by your artistic hand." Following the combat on Mindanao, a formal ceremony was held to honor the sacrifices made by the soldiers of the 21st Infantry Regiment. The commanding officer, Colonel William Verbeck, spoke of his men. Your devotion to duty, your undying courage, your sacrifices, the hardships you underwent, the elan which marked you as proud men, your spirit of comradeship, your cheerfulness, the lives you lost, the wounds you bear, your honor, this shall be passed to future soldiers of the 21st Infantry. This shall be given to new generations of your countrymen. Awards were presented for exemplary performance in battle and recognition given to those who had earned promotions in rank. Conducting this ceremony was important for the morale of our troops that had suffered greatly during our various Pacific campaigns. Throughout the war, many soldiers of the 21st Infantry Regiment were decorated for bravery. Only one of those received the Medal of Honor, which was awarded posthumously. That soldier was Private First Class James H. Diamond, age 20, of Gulfport, Louisiana. The citation read, Private Diamond, as a member of a machine gun section, Company D, 21st Infantry Regiment, Army of the United States, displayed extreme gallantry and intrepidity on May 8th, 9th, 10th, and 14th, 1945, at Mindanao, when a Japanese soldier rose from his foxhole to throw a grenade into their midst. This valiant soldier charged and killed the enemy with a burst from his submachine gun. Then, by delivering sustained fire from his personal arm and simultaneously directing the fire of 105 mm and 50 caliber weapons upon the enemy pillboxes, immobilizing his and another machine gun section, he enabled them to put their guns into action. When 2 infantry companies established a bridgehead, he voluntarily assisted in evacuating the wounded under heavy fire and securing artillery fire so intense as to render the vehicle inoperative, despite the fact that he suffered from a painful wound. The following day, he again volunteered, this time for a hazardous job of repairing a bridge under heavy enemy fire. On 14 May 1945, when leading a patrol to evacuate casualties from his battalion, which was cut off, he ran through a virtual hail of Japanese fire to secure an abandoned machine gun. Though mortally wounded as he reached the gun, he succeeded in drawing sufficient fire upon himself so that the remaining members of the patrol could reach safety. Private Diamond's indomitable spirit, constant disregard of danger, and eagerness to assist his comrades will ever remain a symbol of selflessness and heroic sacrifice to those for whom he gave his life. In September of 1945, after the Japanese surrender, we were still on Mindanao, wondering when we would return home. During this time, we were notified that the 24th Division was being ordered to Japan for occupation duty. The Army faced a serious problem of low morale among the troops. It made major efforts to provide recreational activities as a way to improve the situation. Here, troops are seen playing a game of volleyball.